Hello and welcome back to the show. I'm Jacquelene Closemore and this is Soulstar Radio on the A1R Psychic Radio Network and Moonstruck TV. So thank you for joining us today. Now, I've got a fantastic guest for you. I believe you're going to love her. Her name is Danista Darcy and she's joining us to actually talk about women's empowerment, which is actually a pretty big subject. I was talking about that a couple of weeks ago and I just wanted to go a lot deeper into that. And Danista is a homeopath, a healer and storyteller. Over 35 years of experience worldwide. She has lived and worked in Santa Fe, USA, Europe, London, India, and now Australia. And she has 5 adult children and 3 grandchildren. That's quite an effort, I've got to say. And she currently practices from Byron Bay and consults worldwide. Her main work is with women using sacred medicine, homeopathic potency, astrology, and Jungian dream work. I love Carl Jung. Both in private sessions and workshops, and many clients call her the midwife to the soul, and she offers mystical journeys for women to explore and reclaim the divine feminine using these tools of sacred medicine in homeopathic form and dreaming, whilst also utilising the power of myths to sift shadow from gold. I love that alchemical sort of transformation that we talk about, turning gravity into levity and lead into gold. And you know, we talk about the old alchemy of, these metals being poured into cauldrons, and really it's that sort of thing of, it's more the energy, the mind, the matter and the emotions. But thank you so much for joining us there, Danista, on the show, and welcome to Soulstar Radio.
Thank you so much for inviting me this morning.
Can you hear us, Danista?
Yep. I can, yes.
Welcome. Beautiful. And so tell us a bit about your journey there. It's quite extensive. You run a homeopathic school and you're entering into a lot more of the Jungian work now.
Yes, I am. It's been a dream of mine to marry the two together for a long period of time. I mean, certainly alchemy affected the way I chose to approach my homeopathy, and over the years as I've worked more with dreams and sacred medicine in potency for women, especially for women, to help them recover their power and to recover the divine feminine. It just keeps growing itself. So it's always new, so yeah, always new.
Beautiful. So tell us, when we're talking about women's empowerment, what sort of things are you seeing when women are coming to you and they're, lost or confused or going through a life change?
Well, I think that there are kind of several initiation moments in a woman's life. One starts with menstruation, one starts when they become a mother, and the other starts later in life. And I think in today's society, which is a very patriarchal culture, women tend to become lost. They're overextended, they're multitasking, they're trying to meet these high expectations, and they're feeling incredibly empty and unhappy and unfulfilled. And of course, because we're like a whole system, the body and, that's housing the soul is a very intelligent system, and it gives us a lot of information about what we need to know and what's right or wrong for us, through not only our dreams, which is a fascinating way of getting under the filter, but also, through our body symptoms and all of that kind of thing. And, these expectations that women are always trying to meet are silent killers of the soul, and women feel incredibly frustrated and impotent, and some of them are just sinking into misery, and, they either end up medicated or acting out, and not all women will recognise that, but some think that something's wrong and they want to go for it. And some of the women that I've worked with are extraordinary women. They're they realise that nature, Mother Nature itself will orchestrate a forest fire to change things. And when things fall apart, they often think something's wrong, but it's that falling apart into chaos that actually calls us to go deeper into what I call the night seed journey, back into the unconscious to locate ourselves. So it's a powerful experience for women to re-enter themselves and start to sift out, who they really are, and, what they're here for and what actually gives them meaning and depth in their life, actually. So, yeah, you would know how that feels, Jacqueline.
It's very powerful work, I find. And it's interesting when we sort of talk about like going into some of the tantric sort of parts of things and how, if the base chakra is not aligned with the heart chakra, what sort of decisions people are making, like women are making particularly, and what kind of partners they're attracting.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Kundalini Shakti, I've worked a lot with Kundalini energy and Tantra for a very long time in the background. It's not something I push forward in the work. I think that's work you've got to, seek out the right teacher and work with someone very closely with that. But yeah, it's if it's not running well, then there's just a repeated pattern. And of course, that's also going to refer back to like the image that a woman has in her own heart of the anemis, and that's usually all mixed up in her shadow material, So this kind of work starts to unravel your own self, out of the shadow, which also contains all the gold, the gold, turning the lead from the back into the gold, which is funny because it's harder for women to own what they're great at. And sorting out like what that anemis is, because what happens is that's constantly projected, as is everything, onto the outside, and the same kind of fella just shows up with a different face, so that's very disappointing to a lot of women.
Yeah. I think also some women get into this trap at the end of relationships of going, that's it, I'm never having a man again. And I think the real statement is more, hang on, what's going on with me and how I've maybe not valued myself that has attracted this, systematic over and over thing. Do you find a lot of that with women, that they're able to see that insight?
Yes, they do. And as they start to unravel this, they're much more content in themselves because, we are striving to become whole, and the more that we're whole, the less likely we are to become incredibly needy as women, and less likely to be guided by this patriarchal expectation of, what a woman is and what was that movie, What Women Want, but do women actually really know what they want, what's good for each individual woman in that sense, and they've got to be pretty brave women to kind of dive really deeply, into like the oceanic kind of womb of the divine feminine, to find who they are, to find their real beauty. Because I think life without beauty doesn't have meaning, but it's these distorted images of beauty that get sold to women in that expectation. I mean, beauty's everywhere, everywhere. Yeah.
And it's kind of a bizarre beauty. And one thing I used to sort of point out years and years and years ago to women, and still am pointing out, is they'll go to a petrol station, certainly in Australia, and back in the day, you would be heading towards a counter and you'd be confronted by images of, women with barely anything on the magazines. And now it's simply images of women that are very skinny and clothed on magazines, but nevertheless it's this image of you must have this size bust, this size waist, etc., etc. And then right next to it are all the chocolate bars. It's like, here's what you should look like. Good luck. There's the chocolate bars, because you probably feel awful, so go and have a chocolate. That'll add some weight onto the hips, and you can just numb yourself. What sort of things do you think, like you've got food, what other things are people using to numb themselves, I guess, from their feelings? Because with Jungian work, it's about getting more in touch with your real feelings, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, if we actually don't feel our feelings, and that's in a context, in a safe place, in sacred space, then we just start unconsciously acting out. So this journey is about undoing a lot of those reference points, that we've been given about who we are as women and what we look like. I think the whole increase in like plastic surgery and lip enhancement, all of that as well is like a whole new kind of distorted way of women trying to refigure themselves. I mean, years ago, I used to see so many young anorexic girls and girls with eating disorders, and it seems to have like leapt into now trying to re-sculpt themselves this way because it's like they're never good enough. They're not. They have to meet this image, and they're never good enough. And now, I guess with the internet and the media being so prominent, this kind of acting out can happen, in a kind of full frontal way on the internet, and that emptiness inside they feel is being filled somehow by so many followers and so forth in that kind of way, So it's as I said, it's tough. But when we turn deep inside and we find out who we really are and we're content with that and we're satisfied, then, becoming more whole, we become more healthy, I mean, it's a long piece of string to undo the patriarchy, which also affects men, as well as women. But today we're speaking about women. So, helping them to find their greater, deeper being, a lot of them will shake that off while they unravel the self and the culture that they've taken on over so many years, So, I mean, my early experience in the 60s and the 70s was, the rebel hippie, and then all of a sudden you're trying to make yourself into something. And when I gave up a very straight career, I was so happy to be taking all the stilettos and the handbags and everything down the op shop, and I felt like I could finally just be myself instead of the expectation of what other people thought I was or wanted to be. And I think all women suffer from that, so yeah.
There's a lot to be said about the issues of high heels. Why high heels and men don't, for example. And recently I saw a man walking down Toorak Road with high heels on, with his lovely pinstripe suit, and he looked gorgeous, I've got to say. He had matching swing tags on his mobile phone to what was on his little boot heels. And I thought, well,
wow.
If you can wear that, that means I don't have to wear makeup, means I don't have to, which I don't have to anyway, but it's what society is telling us. And this idea of and construct of, for example, why women's clothing doesn't have pockets, why men have such thin wallets and we have to carry these stupid handbags. So it's this whole sort of, thing that where people go, oh, but society's equal. And it's like, yeah, no. Those
things are all fun to play with, aren't they? Yeah. And to dress up in every now and then, but it's just that pressure, like that constant kind of pressure to always be. I mean, gosh, I can remember when Mary Quant brought out the first makeup to make love in, which was sold as you can go to bed and make love with this and it's not going to smudge, back in the 60s, and at the time we all thought that was fabulous. And when you kind of think, I just don't want to be this person anymore, I just want to be a little bit more free, you kind of feel incredibly relieved, to be who you are in pure possibility without that kind of restriction. I mean, it's a relative thing in each women, and, these are like exaggerations, but I think they make the point,
Oh, so. Gosh, yes. So tell us about the Jungian dream work. You're very excited about that, and what does that, how does the process work for people with that?
Well, the way that I like to do it, because my work is really directed at women and self-empowerment, I believe that dreams have so much energy and meaning for us. There's an old saying that a dream missed is like not opening a letter. And the unconscious is providing its take on life and our growth all the time, and helping women to unravel that without flattening it down like, a folded piece of paper, and keeping the dream like a kind of almost numinous remedy to help them, unravel themselves and get to the heart of who they are, is quite amazing. And I like to often set it up with, obviously having a session with someone is entering into sacred space, but I also like to set them up sometimes with getting the dreams going using sacred medicine, but as in potency, in other words, a homeopathic version of the sacred medicine, to kind of kickstart the dreams in that sense and kind of loosen things up, which is much more gentle and revealing. for them. And at the end of the day, you know, they're the one that's going to have the real deeper meaning, but it's helping them to learn to like understand their own symbols. Symbols are very, very powerful. They're you know, pre-verbal, you know, and they last forever. I mean, a dream that you had 25 years ago can still be relevant and still hold that quality of real numinous energy, you know. And yes, sometimes they can be precognitive dreams as well too, and they can be kind of woven together. And it's a beautiful way of starting to unpack things so that we know where we've got somehow who we are and all caught up in our shadow, and working that out and freeing ourselves from, you know, the ties that have bound us for like so many years. And it's been so fascinating as well too, because, you know, after having worked as a homeopath for years, so many people have so many physical symptoms, and, you know, the original state of homeopathy, as was alchemy, related to the somatic expressions that come from the deeper psyche into the body. And people think that things in their body just happen for no reason, but these are also like messages. And, you know, a lot of symptoms seem to like waft away just using that as they get the realization about the message. I mean, you know, sometimes life speaks in whispers and we ignore it until there's what's called an antiodromia, or an opposite, and something happens outside where it's the anti's been upped a bit more, if you like, to really get our attention, you know. So helping women to take the time to watch the dream work and to re-enter the dream later. Carl Jung called it active imagination, but it's got its history in you know, the realms of magic and the occult as well, to go back into like the scenario and see what happens, or see if something changes at that moment. And when life is pretty tough and people feel like they're in that moment where it's this choice or that choice, to just help them learn to stand in that tension, not either or, but and, because when we can stand in and, something else will happen that releases. And also the important thing is to be able to slow down in this world that's so fast and so hard on our nervous system, and just patient waiting, you know, that I call it patient waiting, just waiting for something to turn. And that feels sometimes, you know, in the dark night of the soul quite tough, but you find that it will shift, something will shift, and either there's a realization or a possibility is released. You know, it's quite amazing to see it happen, and to see the women kind of get it, you know, like it's just to kind of hold them in that space while they get it, you know. So normally if they go for it, they become very, very passionate about it, and they can usually move in and on themselves. They've got a pretty good idea sometimes of, you know, what's going on. So, yeah, we have to remember, you know, the divine feminine energy is quite chaotic, and it's been held back for a very, very long time. And it's very powerful, you know, very, very powerful. I'm sure you've had experiences of that in your life. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's been these sort of times where I've sort of, I remember many years ago, and I remember coming up with this fever. And I went, hello, this fever is a bit different. I don't actually feel sick. But this fever, I got, this morning, you need to go up to this particular suburb that I'd had all sorts of trouble getting a rental in. It was very near my mother, and I was needing help with my children at the time. And I'd tried the year before relentlessly, gotten absolutely nowhere with real estate agents who would send me to addresses that were already rented out, knowing they were rented out already, just wasting my time and, you know, not helping. And so here we were a year later, and I'm getting told in the morning, this fever is for a reason, don't go to work. And I went, okay. So I rang up work, sorry, I've got a fever. No, I really did have a fever, but I didn't feel sick. I'm like, this fever is a shift. This is a feeling that's different. I don't feel sick, yet I have a fever. Right, so I got in the car in my work clothes and just turned towards this suburb. And, you know, it was a good 30-minute drive from my house at the time. And And I'd gotten up to the real estate agents about 10 minutes before opening, and usually these people didn't open until sometimes 5 minutes after, their 9 a.m. start. And I remember walking in and saying, right, I'd like to see this property, this property, this property. Oh, well, have you seen them out the front yet? And I said, yes, of course I have. I hadn't, and because I was just that up to here with it. I was sick of it, and I hate telling lies, but it was like, nah, I've seen them. And then I went to the other real estate agent. I'd like to look at this property. I'm sick of looking at rentals. I don't have time for this. I don't just started looking. It's just that I had looked a year before, and I was sick of it from a year ago. But, this particular property, it's 10 o'clock, there's a couple going to see it, so you can go there too. And I went, thank you very much. I just, can't keep doing this. I can't keep taking days off work, blah, blah, blah. And so I drove around to this property, and I went, oh, my God, that's the property that I drove past 2 years ago thinking, geez, if I could just get a rental up here, that one sure would be nice. And it didn't have a rental sign 2 years ago when I drove past it. I just picked it out and went, that'd be good. So here I was pulling up to that same house thinking, my God, if I get this, I'm going to be happy, because this was going to be my last ever rental as far as I was concerned. That was it. I'm done, So I go in at 10 a.m. and the other couple are there, and they're actually opening the wardrobes and looking through the wardrobes and going, oh, it's plenty of space. And they're really, articulately going through and taking a long time. And I'm just walking around putting on the unimpressed face. Because that's what I got in, and I got intuitively put on the unimpressed face, walk through it very swiftly, and then at the very end of it say, well, I guess this will do. It's not really, completely to my liking, but it'll do. And I really can't afford to keep taking days off work. I'm very busy. I'm missing a very important meeting this morning, don't you know? And, I really just need to find a place quickly. It's going to be convenient to my mother, and the children could go to school. It's literally, 1 minute walk to school. And I just, let me know because I understand you've got another couple looking, but really I've got other properties I'm looking at this morning, and then I'm just not going to bother after this. And so that afternoon I was offered that property and I was offered another property from another agent. And then they got into a bidding war with each other, and they actually started dropping the rent, which is unheard of because usually in Australia you're actually bidding to the rent up to get it, that if anything.
Yeah.
So they were dropping the rent. I actually ended up getting $50 a week off the rent on this place that I actually really wanted because the energy, I had just gotten to that point of going, you know what, I'm just going to I had gotten to the point of going, this energy just needs to bottom out. And then the fever happened, and it was like everything broke and moved. And it was literally the next day I was signing the contract. The day after that I picked up the keys. And the day after that we picked up and moved into the house with packing boxes real quick. So it really is that shifting of energy that we're sort of talking about there, that if people can sit in that uncomfortableness rather than having to race off for the next thing or the app or go and do this quickly, soothing through outside mechanisms. And what you're talking about is that self-soothing, that quietening, and that just shutting it down for a while. That's really quite beautiful. Thank you so much for coming on air with us. I'd like to really get you to explain how people can reach you.
Okay, so at the moment, I'm having a new website done, but my email is at the bottom of the show notes, which is denistadevi@gmail.com, and if anybody wants to book a session, they can do it through that. The website will be up next month, and that's called The Night Seed Journey, which explains all the work I do with women using sacred medicine and dream work and homeopathy and the workshops and all of that kind of thing. So, in the meantime, that's probably the best contact as well too. So thank you so much for having me on today. That's been a lot of fun. And,
absolutely brilliant. Thank you for joining me. And what we'll do as well is we're going to put the links up on the Facebook page so people can find. And when your website does go online, do let me know because we'll have you back on it. Okay. Yes. And I'll also link your website through the page as well. So that's going to be really good. That's
fantastic. We'll try and get it done before Mercury goes retrograde, which I believe it's about to do very soon. So
Good old Mercury, that's a whole other subject, isn't it?
Oh, yeah, we could talk for hours about that one. Yep. So, yeah, this is a funny month this month. It's a bit of a heavy, I think it's a very heavy month, and there's a couple of respites with Jupiter and Neptune contact. So I'm kind of aiming for that, I think. Very dreamlike. So, but yeah, thank you so much, Jacqueline. It's been lots of fun.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you, Denista. It's been a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We'll look forward to catching up with you next week. And there's going to be more shows on A1R Radio coming up next and Moonstruck TV. Catch you next time. In the meantime, sending you lots of love and light. Mwah! Bye.
Okay. Bye to you too. Bye, darling.